family power.
You are a product of all who came before you.
That guy with a freaking machete for an arm just chopped our butts in half.
It's time to show the world who I really am. My name is Shang-Chi.
Shang-Chi.
Shang.
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 S-H-A-N-G. Shang.
That's what I said.
You heard it up top. Welcome back to Normies Like Us, where we are kung fu fighting and we are fast as lightning, because that's right. We're talking Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings, the new Marvel movie, the comics, the character, all of it, here on Normies Like Us with your hosts, Kung Fu Colin.
Awkwafina.
Nice. And this is Jacob in the Ten Rings.
Nice.
Amazing. Jacob Leung.
Too hard about that.
You're the Jacob Anderin.
Yes,
right.
yes. And Maurice is somewhere running around too. Morris.
I hope not.
That thing is terrifying. But yeah, we're going to be talking the latest Marvel movie, Legend of the Ten Rings, starring Simu, Awkwafina, and Tony Leung. Came out this weekend, and so that's what we'll jump into, as Colin said. But up top, let's talk a little bit of this movie's kind of something we haven't got a lot of in the last decade, and that's a martial arts movie. You know, I know growing up, at least for me, martial arts movies were pretty big. Jackie Chan was still big. You have movies like Rush Hour. Jet Li was popular at that time. We had Crouching Tiger, was a big theatrical, darling at that time. So nowadays, not a ton of martial arts movies. A lot of spy action, but not really martial arts. So do you guys have a history with martial arts movies, kung fu movies? Do you kind of grow up with it, or how do you feel, Colin?
Well, Mike, we did the Bruce Lee episode.
That's right.
Go back and listen, Normies. I apologize for my bad audio. I love Bruce Lee. I was late to him, didn't find him till like college. Jackie Chan was my guy growing up.
Mm-hmm.
But I think I confessed on that like Crouching Tiger, as far as this, like seeing foreign films, was like the biggest experience I'd ever seen. Subtitles, martial arts you've never experienced before. To be back to that, the wushu wuxia type filmmaking with Marvel, I really never thought we'd be here.
No, I didn't think so either. Jacob, how about you? Do you grow up watching the old martial arts films, or?
Yeah, a little bit. Like Colin, Jackie Chan, I was basically obsessed with Jackie Chan as a young kid, and as a young preteen, say, when I was like 12 or so. I went to the video store and I rented Shanghai Noon, and I watched that. I think that was my first Jackie Chan experience.
Wow.
This is the greatest movie I've ever seen in my life at 12 years old. So from that, I just saw like a bunch of his older movies. It's like Hong Kong action movies and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm familiar with Bruce Lee and his work and that kind of thing, but I'm not too. There's a lot I haven't seen yet, but like and also Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon, that kind of like running up the walls and that kind of
the
stuff.
The wire fu stuff. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. So I'm definitely into that.
Gotcha. Yeah, and we kind of talked about it on the Bruce Lee stuff. I'm a big fan of Bruce Lee and all kind of martial arts genres as a kid. If there was punching, kicking, or weapons, I was into it. Ninjas, were big.
Totally.
Power Rangers. So
ninjas were magic when we were kids. They were Power Rangers, Mike. They had this They was Dragon Ball Z. They could shoot energy and do martial arts. It was a perfect combo.
Yeah, ninjas had like this power, right? And kind of Shang-Chi is bringing a martial art superhero to the big screen, which is exciting. So as someone who has been a longtime fan of the genre, it's cool to see a return to it, because for a lot of young people, this might be their first martial arts film, right? And that's an interesting way to look at this.
Totally.
But yeah, so that's kind of what I wanted to ask off top.
And like you said, Mike, it's not necessarily that they make these movies anymore. We're kind of lucky that Marvel's pumping money into it. So can I ask, are you guys familiar with the Marvel character at all?
I was not. I had no idea about the character, Shang-Chi, about the Ten Rings. I didn't even put together that the Mandarin from Iron Man 3 was connected to them until I saw Ben Kingsley in the movie, and I was like, oh shit. So that was very interesting, and I was like, oh, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, and I was not familiar either. And as soon as we jump into it, we'll go through the history of the character and we'll talk the movie. But I didn't know anything, kind of went into this cold, right? As far as background on the character. I guess we'll discuss what we thought about it. You know, lightly, I liked it, but I didn't know anything about it going in. And I guess structurally, this is, you know, an origin movie. So we're getting introduced to this character. They're introducing an audience who's maybe unfamiliar. And now if you're listening to this, one, there'll be spoilers. And two, you'll get an introduction to the comic background and origin of this character yourself. So there you go. Did you know about him before? You following?
No, you know, if we are just saying personal history,
real quick.
You know, this is everyone getting introduced. I think you gotta pull the hipster card and say things like, "Well, I've always been a Shang-Chi fan." I don't know. I don't know that those people exist.
Right.
And look, you know, normies, go to our YouTube page where you can watch this feed live. I have my Shang-Chi comic here that's in the run of Marvel comics that I collect. Marvel Now, their sort of 2010 run. And I'll say quick story. It was the second comic that I bought in that. I bought them originally because I wanted to start reading Nova comics. I liked those, and then I went to the store again a month later and found this Shang-Chi comic. Guess what? It's 5 billion times different than what this movie is. So I think it's the perfect loose jumping point to do a lot of cool, interesting things that Marvel did. Let's jump in and talk about them on Normies Like Us.
I know that you don't like to talk about your life, but a guy with a freaking machete for an arm just chopped our butts in half. Who are you?
On September 3rd, my father trained me to be an assassin. But that's not who I am. A Marvel legend will rise.
You got this.
Thank you.
Welcome back to Normies Like Us. That's right. We're jumping in. We're going to do spoilers. We're going to talk the plot, of the new film, Marvel's Shang-Chi. Their first movie in theaters since Black Widow, and one that you had to go to theaters to see, guys. I assume that you did as well, because we had to, right?
Yeah, and some people might still not feel super comfortable with that, you know, and Joe did not go see it in theaters, and that's fine. But we all did, and I was surprised. It's the most crowded a theater has been for me since the pandemic. Like, I've been cautiously going. Yeah, more crowded than Fast and the Furious 9, obviously more crowded than The Green Knight. It's the most crowded it's been, I think, since we've started getting back into the theaters, at least at the local theater that I was going to. Biggest turnout and biggest Labor Day opening of any movie ever supports that. So that's kind of cool, but we can talk that more later. Jacob, how was your experience going to see this?
Well, that's interesting. For me, it was a very different experience. My theater was not even full at all. It was like half full, which was surprising because I actually went at like 11 p.m. on a Saturday.
Oh, wow.
Wow.
And maybe I guess some of the earlier showings probably were fuller because I was like looking at seat availability. But when I bought my seat, I got the best seat in the house, like center row, or center of the theater. But once people started filing in at the beginning of the movie, I was like, wow, this is there's still a lot of empty seats. So that was kind of surprising. But I think maybe it was just because it was 11 p.m. or something like that. But
Gotcha.
But the other psychopaths start filing in. That's that audience you saw with.
Yeah, and the audience there was pretty, let's just say, boisterous, and a lot of talking and laughing during the movie and stuff. So that kind of
That's kind of a
affected
bummer.
my experience a little bit. But that happens time to time. So
That's something you haven't heard reports of bad manners at theaters. I didn't experience that. It was just pretty crowded, and people seemed to enjoy it. But that's a bummer that you had a rough crowd.
yeah, it happens. But what can you do?
Yeah.
Well,
yeah.
okay. Third, completely different option. Thursday night preview, like an 8 o'clock showing. Dead. 4 other people, maybe me and a friend. And, this is a film we'll get into. Like, I want to say 25% subtitles. So a lot of just quiet murmuring, not boisterous at all. Just sort of a lot of, like, engagement you would see almost in, like, The Green Knight, Mike.
Yeah, right. That is a bold thing too. We'll get into it, the movie proper, but like the fact that there's subtitles and an anecdote. I live in Koreatown area, doxing myself, but the local theater oftentimes will have Korean subtitles on the blockbuster movies, right? So we would be watching it, and you would have the Korean subtitle and the English subtitle, and then the Chinese language being spoken. So it's like this 3 languages happening at once for my experience.
I like that, the melting pot.
Yeah, it's very cool.
Well, let's, Mike, you're
Talk the
kind of our
character,
quick
maybe.
summary guy. It's 1,000 years ago. Do we want to talk character first?
Let's talk about the history of Shang Chi, and then we'll bring people up to
Good
speed
idea.
on the character himself, and then we'll see that deviation, I guess, that Marvel did, if you would please.
Good idea. So, Sax Rohmer is a English novelist. It's the 1910s. He's somebody born in like the 1890s, okay? He's kind of an Arthur Conan Doyle-esque guy who's working on like a Sherlock Holmes-esque story. And he comes up with this character, a villain, named Dr. Fu Manchu. And you go, what the fuck does this have to do with Shang-Chi? What does an English novelist in 1910 makes a racist, evil character? Who cares? Well, fast forward to the 1970s. A very popular television show starring David Carradine is called Kung Fu. It's about the wandering monk grasshopper. And it's a very popular serialized television show that sort of gets karate, martial arts, kung fu into the zeitgeist. We're not up to the Karate Kid yet, but we do have kick-ass Bruce Lee movies. Guy who was supposed to be in Kung Fu developed it.
That's right.
Did not get it. And Marvel looks at that and goes, well, fuck. Let's do what we do. We have Star Wars comics because Star Wars is popular. We have Willow comics because, like, Willow's popular. Let's make Kung Fu the Traveling Monk comics. And they can't get the rights to it. And they go like, fuck. Okay, what do we do? Keep going through the catalog. Go through the catalog. Oh, we could buy the Sax Rohmer book series. We could own the character Dr. Fu Manchu. Oh, that's kind of an interesting angle to come at. Because we're buying a villain. We're not buying, like, the hero character we wanted to do. But it gives us the opportunity to just go, let's create our own traveling karate kung fu master, and he'll be the son of Dr. Fu Manchu. Okay, what are we going to call him? Okay, how about the master of kung fu, Shang Chi? And they come up with the character Shang Chi. And again, that's pretty niche for what we usually cover on Normies Like Us. So that's you guys have never read any of those Sax Rohmer books or anything, or have any idea who Dr. Fu Manchu is, right?
Right. No, I had no idea. Yeah. Jacob, of course.
You're a very big fan, Jacob. A character that we should say, I mean, he was the parody basis of Dr. No, for like James Bond books. It was truly just like an evil Asian super mystic. There's kind of been a lot of characters that parody it. Big Trouble in Little China is kind of like a Fu Manchu parody story.
Oh, that kind of, the like wizard, like martial arts wizard kind of vibe. He's like an evil dude. Yeah, the villain of that movie. I get that vibe. And the 70s, right? That's kind of like the beginning of the breakout of, martial arts movies. That's when, like, Jackie Chan starting his career. That's when Bruce Lee is doing his work.
Totally.
That was the early days, and we're getting, Drunken Master and stuff coming out, and, the Wu-Tang Clan is watching these in New York, plotting world domination, in their childhood. So the 70s, it's like, it's the wave's starting to break, and they're like, well, let's get on this now pretty early, and I guess that's why
the world is changing in an interesting way, Mike, because the other popular characters at the time for like 1997 or 1977 are like Marv Wolfman creating Blade. You feel them being like, oh, other people than white people buy this stuff, so let's sort of like spread our net out a little bit. And Shang-Chi, a very progressive character. Now, his father, they lose the rights to Fu Manchu. And he becomes a character named Zhang Zhu. Now, when we get to the movie, that's not even the character that they use for Tony Leung's character, or for the father of the Shang-Chi.
Yep.
So again, there's a lot of springing, jumping off points and muddled history that it's just almost not even worth talking about.
But yeah, it's good to get that baseline, I guess. And then if this is a completely different take, the one thread that seems to stick is the son of the villain. You know, we'll get into it in the movie.
Totally.
That is still maintained as kind of the origin, the core.
Like kind of a Star Wars story, Mike. Again,
Yeah.
1970s. You can see it being like, we've got the big bad, we've got the kid who was raised by someone else who's got to do the right thing. Like they very much know what's going on in the comic book and entertainment world.
Yeah, and I think they did a good job with the movie. Again, we'll get there. And it's like, if you can tell that kind of Star Wars-esque story, maybe the studio that owns Marvel should make Star Wars. They might do a good job. But,
No, I don't think so.
Jokes aside, and you have here in the notes, there's a couple attempts to make, Shang-Chi movies with Brandon Lee. You have, and then you said Blade was being written. The director of the Blade movie, Stephen Norrington, also mentioned he was going to do a Shang-Chi project.
Totally. And
Yeah.
the Brandon Lee connection is so interesting because obviously what the character has become. So in the 70s, the traveling kung fu master. By the time of the 80s and 90s, I mean, I think we kind of talked about it in our Bruce Lee episode, Mike.
Yeah.
You know, Enter the Dragon is essentially a James Bond movie.
Yeah.
And they really looked at the character as a James Bond stand-in from that point. It became more about martial arts and espionage opposed to like mysticism.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
again, kind of not where the movie goes, but that's where the comic book ends up, sort of taking its turn. So the fact that it was, Brandon Lee, God bless his heart, if he had survived The Crow, might have
Yeah.
been doing something with Shang-Chi. I would have loved to see that.
Well, it's a full circle thing too, in that, I guess, parallel universe or multiverse. It's like Bruce Lee developed the Kung Fu show for himself as a way to, he liked to use his movies to get the philosophy of martial arts to the masses. He was going to use the show as a way to kind of do that. He didn't get it, so then to inspire the character Shang-Chi and then have a show or, film with his son, at least the ownership of the genesis of that character comes back to the Lee family. That would have been great. Instead, 2021, it ends up in the Liu family. With Simu our lead, and I guess now we could talk what actually did make it to the screen. 2021's Shang-Chi, as we now know, not Shang, and The Legend of the Ten Rings. What do you guys think about it? Just general thoughts, Jacob. Let's ask you first.
I thought it was pretty good. I liked it. The fight choreography was good. It was I'd say, okay, basically what I think is on a story level, it's kind of around, it feels very similar to a lot of MCU origin stories, right? So it's not doing anything super like original or innovative in that regard, but I think what elevates it is the action, the fight scenes, and the sort of family dynamic with the villain being, Shang-Chi's dad, and the familial aspect of his sister, and the whole story behind their family with their dad and their mom. So I think that elevates it, but in a lot of ways, I think it's very mid-tier MCU.
All right. I'm with that. Before I give my piece, Colin, where are you landing on it?
I'm excited to hear where yours is, Mike. I'm a little colder on it. I lean towards what Jacob said with this repetition of the origin story. I told you guys right after I saw it, it felt very Doctor Strange to me. You've got the beats of two opposing people chasing down a MacGuffin that releases a being beyond anyone's conception that the good guy then has to stop. And that's, not the worst thing they could be doing. This is Project 27 and movie 2 of Phase 4. It's like, like at this point, guys, we're fucking running out of room.
That's
again.
That's what I kind of think is like, they've got a formula down now. And I kind of felt it with Black Widow too, where it's like, they've got the Marvel formula. There's certain things that'll elevate certain projects. To me, this kind of felt like maybe a mix of Doctor Strange with Black Panther, because there's a lot of similar aspects. Ta Lo being basically Wakanda, but instead of advanced technology, they have like magic and stuff.
Yeah.
I will say I think the third act really surprised me because it went places I didn't expect it to go, and so I do like that it built to that. But I think that the first and second act kind of feel a little. I was not totally interested the whole time, I guess.
Gotcha.
All right, Mike, don't dwell in the darkness any longer. Tell us.
I feel like I'm kind of in the opposite end of where Jacob was, where I was. The third act is where I started to kind of lost me a little bit. And I really liked the first two acts more because, and full spoilers we'll get to, but the end kind of gets to a big, CG action Marvel style. It's a big ending.
Fires a Kamehameha, Mike.
Yeah, it's wild. Yeah, there's a lot going on. There's a dragon. There's a big bat demon.
The thing is, I didn't expect a giant dragon fight.
Yeah,
at the end
Chen
of
Ron.
Yeah. Everyone knows. Which is basically Shen Long if you're a Dragon Ball fan, same kind of thing. So you're getting elements of cool stuff that's familiar to you if you're a fan of this genre, So I wasn't expecting a dragon fight, but I liked when it was being a martial arts movie, and some of the choreography, is really impressive when they're not leaning so heavily on the CG. They are doing long, wide takes. The way they film the fighting is actually pretty good for. I wasn't expecting the martial arts to actually be presented well.
Mike, can I ask you this? Other Marvel martial arts focused property, did you watch Netflix's Iron Fist?
I did not. I did
Jacob.
not watch Iron Fist.
No.
Wow.
I
did you see it?
Okay.
I heard it was not good though.
That's the only one of those Netflixes where I didn't make it to the second season. It's I think it did live up to the disastrous hype on that one, Jake.
Who are you?
Not who you think I am.
I'm going back to the very beginning of the MCU. We have a keystone event, and that event is Tony Stark becoming Iron Man. He's forced to build these weapons for an organization, and that organization was the Ten Rings. And there was this wonderful character we really wanted to do something with someday, and that was Shang-Chi.
When they announced this movie, I was really, really excited. Kind of tongue-in-cheek, I ended up tweeting Marvel, hey, are we gonna talk or what? So I'm very glad I did that.
He's so intense as this character. Shang-Chi was made for Simu, and I could feel his passion for it.
I totally agree with you about the fight choreography was super well done, better than I expected for a Marvel movie, and it wasn't really shown too much in the trailers. That's why I was kind of surprised because there's a big part of this movie, and it does kind of harken back to even the early 2000s. Like I mentioned, Jackie Chan at one point he was like one of the biggest, one of the biggest box office draws in the world. If he was in your movie, you had Rush Hour, Shanghai Noon, all these Hollywood movies that were doing huge.
The Tuxedo. Well, maybe that's a little bit lesser.
Well, and Jacob, what did those movies evolve into? The Matrix, which then continued to change that more and more.
Yeah, and so you really had this kind of resurgence of kung fu and martial arts movies, even in the 2000s, which has kind of died out by this time now. So I feel like this is a resurgence of martial arts in Hollywood blockbusters. Now all martial arts movies are kind of the John Wick style, mixed martial arts, right?
Yeah, Krav Maga.
Headshots,
really
a lot
realistic.
of Krav Maga. Yeah.
Gritty, not stylized, not fantastic. Even though these are real kung fu forms, but there's a flashiness, there's a theatrical element to it that's kind of missing in modern action movies, and I always like that.
Right, you've got that crouching tiger theatricality of it all, and
some throwbacks to that era.
Yeah, and obviously we love John Wick, but it's like the popularity of that made every movie after it have to be like John Wick, whereas this is this is still very lighthearted and fun.
And Jacob, the success to John Wick, that what those fucking producers don't understand is that when I watch those behind the scenes videos or the training videos that Keanu puts out where he goes, this is my weapon drill test for the day, and you realize he's really doing that.
Yes.
When I see the behind the scenes stuff that Simu is really doing that stuff, that's why it works.
He says he just did a backflip for his audition. He just flipped into the superhero landing, and it's
hilarious.
And of course, Jackie Chan, well known for doing all his own stunts and just doing crazy shit. But the thing I think that made Jackie Chan stand out in the 2000s is his comedy aspect and his able to do mixed comedy and action, and that kind of thing.
It's like I mean, his favorite actors were like Buster Keaton and these like physical comedy, old school.
Burt Reynolds.
Really good at that.
Yeah. So he really liked that, and you get some of that in this in particular. I guess let's talk. My favorite action scene is the scene in the bus when the bus is out of control.
I thought just because we were talking about comedy, I thought you were about to say my favorite action star is Awkwafina. But yes, I agree that the bus is a fantastic part.
Yeah, and there's elements in the bus scene that reminded me of old Jackie Chan fights where Simu,
Totally.
Shang is trying to fight while also having another objective, such as driving the bus and defending. That's a very Jackie Chan style beat.
Speaking of Keanu, it reminds me of Speed.
Yeah.
And I always thought, Jackie Chan, he was really good at using the environment in kind of using that within the choreography.
He'll do things with a wooden stool that you couldn't believe. You know what I mean?
Right.
Yeah, and there's a lot of that in that fight scene in particular. And just like, they're valet drivers and the fact that Awkwafina then needs to drive a bus, like use a skill that she has in an important moment. Like, oh, you're making a movie, So that stuff was good. Let's talk to casting. How do we think Simu Liu? I think he's pretty good as Shang-Chi. There's, comedy. What do you think about him?
I thought he was good.
He doesn't have to deliver the lines well, right, Jacob? He can do the fucking flips and shit. That's literally all I fucking care about in this. The added fact that there are those, thoughtful moments where he, like, the grandma is only speaking, to Chinese to him and stuff, and they're connecting. I'm like, oh, this is great.
Yeah.
And his casting was, I think, was a case of he really wanted to do this, and I think he tweeted something. It was like the our guy from the karate Cobra Kai, who's going to be Blue Beetle now. He wanted to do it so bad he tweeted
Miguel.
Solo, yes,
Marvel
you're right.
making, Shang-Chi, and then they did. So like he kind of got it, got himself there. But
Ryan Reynolds did into existence.
And wants to prove himself.
Deadpool. Right.
Yeah.
So he definitely wanted to do this, and I think he did a very good job. Like he wasn't amazing or anything, but he was like perfectly fine in the role, and him doing his own stunts in his own fighting definitely helped.
Like we said, with John Wick, you see that Keanu is really doing it. You see that he is really doing it. That's the appeal of a martial arts film. I hate when I'm watching a modern action movie and it's clearly the stunt double doing the action, or they're editing too quick because he can't complete an action sequence that's 30 seconds or longer, So that was good to see.
Definitely, the way these fight scenes are choreographed and shot, it definitely feels like an old, the Hong Kong style of action.
Yep.
And similarly, I thought he has the charisma to do this. I first saw him in Kim's Convenience, which is a Canadian show. You can watch it on Netflix about a Canadian-Korean family.
And the father was in the Mandalorian season 2 as a rebel pilot. So
that's right. And it's good. It's funny. You guys like it?
It's funny. Yeah, it's a sitcom. It's about a family that owns a convenience store, and it's kind of the parents are Korean immigrants, so they have like a heavy Korean accent, and
there's cultural misunderstanding between the Canadian people, and
the kids are first generation Canadian, so they have very Canadian accents, and so it's kind of, and then the dad and the son, it's kind of, they have a falling out before the show starts, so it's a lot about
there's friction with the father. He knows how to do this story.
Yeah.
Well, he has those 10 rings that he controls the convenience store with.
Yeah, they're key rings, and each one opens one of the safe boxes.
But even when I saw that, I thought, he had the natural charisma that he could kind of front an MCU movie like this. And of course, he had the physique. I mean, he's pretty ripped. So
it's a Chris Pratt-esque, right, Jacob? Picking up from Parks and Rec. You're plucking these standouts in sitcoms.
Comedic,
right? But he was already pretty muscular, and
I do like that they just remove his shirt for no reason. They're just like, and take off your shirt, Ronnie Chang. We love Ronnie. He's in this movie. It's like, take off your shirt, and it's like, if I worked out that much, I'd make sure they caught it on film at least for a scene, right? Like Nanjiani.
But what do we think about Awkwafina?
Yeah, our number 2, our co-lead. I think she's good. I was a big fan of Raya. She voiced Sisu in that, the dragon. She's good. I actually like her and Simu's dynamic together. This kind of best friend, slight will they won't they.
I thought that was interesting. Yeah, I thought that was interesting as well, because maybe they are doing a will they won't they, but I kind of like, it's refreshing to have like a platonic friendship between a male and a female that's no really interest in romance, although maybe they're going to get together at some
But
point.
it's not being forced right now.
Yeah,
Exactly. I think they're cool friends. I like the we should go to sleep. We have an early shift, and then they go out and go to karaoke and stuff all night. It's like I've been there. I can relate. So that's very fun. Colin, do you like Awkwafina? Have you seen much of her other work?
Nora Lum, old Nora Lum. I very recently started her Comedy Central show, where she's very good.
What's the name of that show?
Awkwafina is Nora from Queens.
Is Nora
from Queens.
Yeah.
That's right.
And it just got a season 2. I'm excited to, I guess, catch up on it. Like you, Mike, I've also seen that Disney Last Dragon movie. A little less into it, but I very much thought she was the standout talent-wise and having fun as that dragon character.
Mm-hmm.
And what is the name of that absolute standout Sundance movie she had a couple years ago? I thought that was fucking fantastic.
The Farewell.
The Farewell.
Thank
you,
Crazy Rich
Jacob.
Asians.
Oh, wow,
it's funny anytime I see her in anything, because I was aware of her when she first came out. She was an internet rapper, basically. She was kind of like a joke rapper.
It's like a little Dickie.
Yeah.
And so it's like to see her transition to like a Hollywood actress that's in all these big movies. It's kind of like you never know who's going to break out and become that next level of star. But it's kind of funny to make your screen name Awkwafina when you're a rapper, and now that's like what you're known by professionally. But
because that was probably just like a meme.
Yeah.
But Mike, how deep into the Dwayne The Rock Johnson of it all do you think we are at this point?
Look at the name of her
the
show
Rundown. Now. You remember The Rundown with his movie? Well, Jacob, that's the hint. You're totally right. Naming the show after her real name is the I'm coming out.
Yeah.
Right. And once you get to, I mean, she's like in her early 30s, probably similar age to us. It's like at some point you don't want to be called Awkwafina when you're like 45, right?
Yeah.
Has anyone done it where they've stayed the character name?
Oh,
Vanilla
man.
Ice?
Still call The Rock The Rock, but I think
a lot of musicians do.
Dwayne Johnson.
Yeah.
Eminem is
Slash
still Eminem.
Is still Slash.
Yeah,
Sting is still Sting. Eminem is still Eminem. Yeah.
That's right. But so she is a rapper, so maybe she'll keep it. But yeah, we haven't gotten to Nora Awkwafina Lum on the posters yet. It's just Awkwafina at this point. So
not yet. Now, Mike, you said she's using her driving skills to save the day in a key scene. Very good payoff.
They set it up. Yep.
What do you think about the archery skills coming in at the end of the day?
Ooh, okay. Maybe she learned that pretty fast.
Maybe they're magic arrows.
Yeah, maybe she just got believe in herself.
Yeah, it was kind of like they needed something for her to do in the village while it's like, okay, I guess she'll train at archery for a day and then she'll be good at archery.
Yeah, that's a little quick. I do like the line though, like if you don't shoot at anything, you won't hit anything or whatever. It reminds me of Wayne Gretzky. You miss 100% of the shots you don't take. Right. Very similar, but like that philosophy, because she's very like
Michael Scott.
Complicit in her life. Yeah, Michael Scott.
Right.
Exactly. So, I mean, it's basically just visualizing a metaphor, I guess. So, yeah, okay, it's fine.
I think the way this movie is structured, it's interesting because, like I mentioned, I actually like the first act where they're setting things up, and then I like the third act. The second act feels the pacing is weird because it introduces this village like towards the end of the movie and then really expands. You're meeting new characters, Michelle Yeoh, and all these villager characters. You're seeing these, technology that they have, which is like dragon scales or whatever. There's a lot of new concepts being introduced in the last third of the movie. And it feels almost a bit rushed.
Well, and
like
Jacob, you're talking, bit rushed. We meet, Mike's gonna do the plot here in a second, but two pendants are put together. A magic water dragon says the road to this place will be open in a week, and then instead a faceless chicken goes, well, actually I can get you there tomorrow. do it separate group people. I mean, it's like wild.
Yeah, we do find Ben Kingsley.
It's a bit of a stretch to get there. Yeah.
So let me talk about one more character, our last kind of main character, my personal favorite character, and then we'll just do the plot. And we got Tony Leung as the father, Wen Wu.
Oh yeah.
Is that the name of the character?
So again, if we're talking differences from comics, Shang Chi, a guy in his 40s, a martial arts super spy. Okay, that's being changed to like a 20-year-old college student who's like a cool laid-back dude. The Mandarin, the big bad of the Iron Man universe. Jacob said, someone who has been referenced, not even just since Iron Man 3, the Ten Rings since Iron Man 1, where they were sort of the deuteragonist to Jeff Bridges' character, right? You know, I said Fu Manchu's out of the picture. Zhang Zhu is introduced, this father character. Again, I just feel like Kevin Feige very wisely goes, we have a lot of baggage with character X, Y, Z all the way through the alphabet. Let's just do our own thing. And they come up with the Tony Leung Wenwu character, an immortal badass who uses these 10 rings, again, unlike how they are in the comic books. And I fucking love this character. I'm sure you guys did too.
Yeah. Let me give my spiel on Tony Leung, because he's incredible in this. He's known as the man who can speak with his eyes, right? So it's like there's so much emotion coming out of just a look, you know.
And he's one of the most famous actors in Hong Kong ever.
Yeah,
right?
he's you know some.
Well,
of his
therefore,
work.
the world, population-wise, if you think about it, right? Yeah.
Lust, Caution. What became The Departed?
Bunch of Wong Kar-wai movies. In the Mood for Love, Happy Together, 2046. He was also in Infernal Affairs, which is what The Departed is based off of. Martin Scorsese's The
Yeah, he's got an incredible
the Leo part.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So great body of work, incredibly talented actor. If you've never seen him, this is a great introduction, and I think he does great in this. There's a turmoil, there's a tragedy to his character, and he really, even when he's being soft, like with the wife and tender, like there's such a range that he demonstrates as this villain antagonist. He's not even really a villain, and he shows a pretty broad spectrum, and I think he does a great job doing that. So that's it. I'm a stand for Tony Leung in this movie. He's the best part for me.
Well, I totally agree. I think he was great. And, you know, classic Marvel, the villain is always some kind of, complicated, sympathetic backstory. Obviously, we saw that with Black Panther and a bunch of others. But so it is a little more complicated. He's not the actual villain, you could say. But Tony Leung, he's great. And he's such a, that class of actor where, of course, even in an MCU movie, he's going to give that character more depth than even maybe they imagined when they wrote it. So if you haven't seen, watch In the Mood for Love. That's an amazing, totally a heartbreaking, sad movie. But
The City of Sadness, another sad movie.
Yeah.
In the Mood for Love is the only Tony Leung movie I'd seen. But Jacob, to what you're saying as far as standout, this is a movie that's an Iron Man villain, as I just said. This is a movie with actual Shang Chi villains. You've got Razor Fist, the guy with the sword for the arm.
Yes.
You've got Death Dealer, the guy with the crazy mask face. Then a Thor villain, the Dweller in the Darkness. But the person who's always going to stand out is the human character with like a real reason for doing stuff, where halfway through this movie I'm like, just let the guy talk to his wife. Like what's everybody being such a bummer about? Let Tony Leung have sex with his wife. Who cares?
He got tricked though by the Dweller, but
You have the wrong guy. Does he look like he can fight? Come on, bro.
You okay?
Yo, what up, y'all? It's your boy Clev coming at you live on the bus. I actually did take a little bit of martial arts as a youth, so I'm gonna try and grade this fight as we're going.
Yeah, it's a good character. I guess now we can just talk about general plot.
One other character that I wanted to talk about real quickly is the Ben Kingsley of it all.
We do need to mention that. They clean up some messy stuff.
Iron Man 3, and at the time, I thought that was a great way to do Mandarin, who's like a problematic character, right? So how to do, instead of doing him straight, we'll do a fake, basically an actor playing the Mandarin as this like worldwide terrorist. And then we find out, obviously he's working for Guy Pearce, but he's just this drunk actor. And I'm amazed that they actually got him. They brought him back in this movie, and he's in a lot more than you would expect.
Yeah,
like a real character. Yeah, Iron Man 3, my favorite Marvel movie. I think it's the best. Jacob, I'm with you. I was not one of these people who are like, hold on. These movies are making a mockery of my favorite villain. The guy who's up there with the Joker, the Mandarin.
Right.
You
Like,
even joke about it in this one, like, oh, they named their villain after an orange or whatever,
it's like,
right?
of course it's and to get the line from Sir Ben Kingsley, what I didn't realize was an incredibly, offensive performance at the time. I mean, he is literally apologizing for that movie. I love it.
Yeah.
And I think that's the only way they could have done it in Iron Man 3 at the time, is to kind of hang a lampshade on it and not do it as a straight villain.
Yeah, and Tony Leung, addresses that like you said, they named it after a chicken dish, these idiots. But it still scared the idiots, out there. Like it worked as a play, but he acknowledges that and put a lampshade on it. I think they did a good job with that.
Yeah, the Doctor Strange, the Ancient One, there was the controversy about the Tibetan, conversion to appease China, essentially, a lot of people think, to Tilda Swinton, a Celtic character.
Yeah.
Then there was the white savior tropes in Iron Fist. People weren't liking that.
Yeah.
We've hit the target in this one. Again, we talked about it. The fact that it was in subtitles most of the movie, too. This is a film where they're saying, like, we have learned our lessons.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I say definitely. They've definitely matured, and I think I'm impressed with it. It is for where they've come from to where we are now. It fixes issues. It's a new martial arts movie, which is cool.
Now,
good
take us through it, Mike, because this is where I have issues. We like all the characters. I think we're agreed on that, right, guys?
But yeah, basically, Sean in the beginning, doesn't really care about doing much. He's just parking cars with Awkwafina. Then he gets pulled into these guys are after his necklace. Turns out he has powers that Awkwafina didn't know about. Then they go on a journey because they stole his necklace. Turns out the necklace is one of two. They meet up with his sister. They come after her, get her necklace, then, there's a whole, the Fight Club underground scene. Turns out those necklaces open the passage, as Colin said, to Ta Lo. And then that's where there's the ancient village where they have been keeping at bay the Dweller in darkness. And the Dweller is calling out to Tony Leung, who is stealing the necklaces, to open the way because he thinks his dead wife is calling him from there. But it's a big trick from a giant bat monster that gets released.
and there's a lot of dragons.
And then a dragon fights that too. And so Shang-Chi has to step up to his father and stop him from releasing Cthulhu.
He has to realize he can control the wind by dancing around him, obviously, that he's inherited from his mother, and he has to earn the respect to wear alien jewelry.
Yes.
And I want to talk about all that. My first gripe, if we're going all the way back with it, I don't like plots in movies where the button is, well, I didn't write this message. Wait a minute. They faked this message so they could smoke out. They would see me go over to Jenny's house instead, and now they know where Jenny lives. We gotta go.
Oh yeah.
That just never works for me.
Well, there's a lot of MacGuffins or things is like, oh, this thing does
forced
this thing,
travel is what I would say, Jacob.
Yeah,
where
it's like he gets that postcard and he's like, oh, I thought you said, he thought it was from his sister or whatever.
Hated it.
Yeah,
I might need to watch it again just to keep everything straight, but it's a long journey just to get us to this ending.
And then there's
it's a long journey just to get to the Fight Club, where you're like, but half of this doesn't even make sense, but it looks really cool.
Right.
Yeah, it does. And like I said, that last third is so packed with world building. And like Michelle Yeoh's character, we didn't really touch on her much, but she's, kind of the village elder kind of.
Yeah,
taking
their
care
aunt. aunt.
She's
the
sister
aunt of their mother. Yeah.
Most characters in this movie are immortal, but also maybe not, because I keep having to remind myself it takes place in 1996 to start. Because when he comes out 1,000 years ago, I'm like, oh right, Shang-Chi's like ancient. That makes sense. They're like, no, he was born in 1996. I'm like, oh really?
His dad,
right?
yeah.
Right,
the idea of Tony Leung just like living like a 90s lifestyle and existence of like, no, I've always been around, but now I'm just gonna have a couple normal kids.
Right. I guess the thing is, the thing that changed his life is meeting their mother, and then he decides to settle down and have a family instead of being like a evil warlord.
Hang up the ring. He puts those away too.
If you love it, then you should have put 10 rings on it.
Yeah,
and that's what he
their
did.
Mother dies, and he goes back to his warlord ways and trains his son to become like a killing machine,
an assassin.
Basically.
That's right, and he doesn't want to go through with it, but he does. He finds those responsible for killing the mother, and then he kills the guy. He lies to Awkwafina at first, but it turns out he didn't. He
Right.
regretted it, and he ran away and didn't want to do assassin stuff anymore.
There's a
to
lot of
America
flashbacks
to
in
be a
this
slacker.
movie, Mike.
A lot of flashbacks. That is
It's like,
true.
oh, there's flashbacks where we see flashbacks inside of flashbacks where I'm like, okay, here we go.
If you like flashbacks, yeah, there's
Right.
a lot of. They're covering a lot of ground, and again, that last third probably deserved more time because there's so much being added. Like the dragon scales, that's a new technology in and of itself, right? And just
Yeah, I
you
mean,
don't get
it's
enough
almost
time
like-
with it.
That stuff feels like it could have been in Shang-Chi 2 or something, but
It's like, what if we did Black Panther, but we only get to Wakanda for the last 40 minutes? Like,
right.
that's the
And
only time we're experiencing that
kinda.
place.
It was almost
yeah.
like Black Panther was like the setup. You already see the origin of him in Civil War, so they kind of could skip a lot of the setup origin stuff that oftentimes drags down origin movies and go right to, okay, he's in Wakanda, his father's dead, blah blah blah. This is like they had to set up everything, and then even the scaffolding fight, which is another cool set piece, but it's like, you know, they're being chased by the Ten Rings assassins, but then at the end, like they just kind of capture them, but they're not really like they're not being held.
They
It
won't
really
captive,
matter.
they're just-
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, and they weren't trying to kill, the assassins weren't trying to kill them.
No,
Just
they were
like
just trying to get them
get
for
the
the death. They
necklace.
could've just
Tony
ripped
Leung
the
can
physical
kind of just
death.
show up at any point. And
He
just kind of
could,
start
man.
smooth
He's so
talking people, and you
powerful.
could just kind of leave. That it might be one of the powers of the rings, Mike.
Tony could also just show up and like destroy any. Like he is so formidable when he has the 10 rings going. Like he could
Yeah.
just take the rings if he like the pendants. So it's like he's
It's-
just
but-
playing a game.
Wider Marvel stuff here, guys. You know, because again, I'm the guy who's asking questions during Star Trek and stuff. I cannot let this stuff settle.
Yeah.
Mhm.
We're just lucky that Tony Leung didn't get snapped, or do you think his rings protected him? Do you think he was doing anything in that
I
time?
think at this
You know,
point,
Wow.
You know, they even mentioned like, oh, we live in a world where half the population can disappear for 5 years, but there's no, you know, saying who might have been snapped or not. Like they kind of just they have to mention it, but like don't think about it too much because
right?
you know. who knows?
Yeah, well, if there's a 50-50 chance, I'm guessing he probably didn't because he kept running his organization for those 5 years. You would think maybe the rings, because, you know, it's alluded to, they're super ancient. Maybe it did protect him. Maybe they're older than the Infinity Stones. We don't even know that at this point. And
Yeah,
as
I mean,
you
do we even
said,
know Shang-Chi may have got snapped, Awkwafina might have got snapped? We don't know.
we have no
Right,
idea.
but if they'd been separated, Jacob, they'd be aging differently. Now, this raises my biggest worry is the post-credit scene stuff.
Yeah, let's get to that.
I just wonder, you know, going forward, because Jacob, like you said, Black Panther had the beauty of another movie where stuff was getting introduced. This one, the way they're attacking these things at the end is like, also, we might call you up to the big leagues one day, and, you know, we might also call up these people, the Eternals, up to the big leagues one day, and, you know,
Right,
the Avengers 5, guys, it's coming up, and maybe you'll all be a part of it. Who knows when we'll see you again? Might be Shang-Chi 2. I mean, it just feels like,
yeah.
relax.
Right. Well, that's the thing is they have to remember that these movies need to stand on their own as movies. Like, yeah, you have to connect it. Like, obviously, you have Wong at one point, and then that cutscene at the end. It's pretty lackluster to me. You get like hologram Mark Ruffalo and Brie Larson. It's like, oh, okay.
What are
yeah,
these?
we're
I don't know what
Avengers.
those are.
It's
Right.
like them saying like, your movie counted. If it
Yeah.
didn't, we wouldn't be here. You made it, kid. You got a Brie Larson cameo, and it's like
right. We don't need that.
one of the
No.
strengths
People
Mike
stand
was
themselves.
saying after he saw it was I kept forgetting it was a Marvel movie. And
Yeah.
if you didn't have that shit at the end, I would feel if it set up Shang-Chi 2, where like, you know, a black dragon came out at the end and was like, Shang-Chi, you're crazy. I'm going to get you next time. I would have been like, this fucking movie
Yeah.
rules. But instead, I just get nervous about where it's going and like, what's going on?
It almost felt like, oh, you know, we need a end credit scene. They're going to be expecting that, and we need some kind of connection to the overall.
Who's the
MCU.
cheapest? How much
Yeah.
can we get
Oh,
Brie
we got Mark
for?
Ruffalo. Okay,
Yeah, he'll do
great.
anything. Yeah, Mark will show
yeah.
up.
And the second end scene was fine. I mean, it was just, you know, his sister. We see that she's now leading the Ten Rings, and that kind of I like that one better. Obviously,
better,
because that
yeah.
kind of sets up
Yeah.
for this franchise instead of trying to expand on the whole world.
Yeah, that's a much better tag. I do like when they're explaining their adventure, and then there was a dragon fighting a bat to their regular friends in San
Oh,
Francisco.
buddy.
and
You
they're
guys
just
are making fun of me.
being honest
Right.
about
well,
it.
this
Yeah,
is the thing that I realize is like those friends shouldn't really be surprised at all. I mean, all these people have lived through everything that's happened to you.
Yeah.
Snap,
Superhero
they've
battles
seen it
are
all at this point.
covered on the news. Yeah, they know what's going on.
And then we met Iron Man's terrorists. That's all you would have to say, and they would be like, "Oh, I do remember that, like 7 years ago." Yeah, that's true.
We're friends with the Mandarin now.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's like the fact that anyone is surprised by anything in this universe is just like you shouldn't be at this point.
Yeah.
No.
Aliens exist. Come on.
They've invaded New York, but this movie overall, maybe pacing, some issues there. There's great action, great casting, good characters, and it's a Marvel movie. It's going to be safe. Rotten Tomatoes, though, 98%. It's doing well. People seem to be loving it, so good on you.
Mike, do you like it better than Black Widow, our other Phase 4 movie?
Definitely.
Not the TV shows. All we've got is Loki, WandaVision, Black Widow, and now Shang-Chi and What If. You like it better, you said.
Yeah, this is the best this is the best movie. I don't know if it's the best Phase 4 thing. I like Loki a lot, but it's definitely better than Black Widow by a long shot.
Jacob, out of that scale?
Yeah, I'd say it's better than Black Widow. I like it just because it has the unique angle of the martial arts, and I think that makes it stand above a lot of recent MCU because it's all starting to kind of blend together, and you need something to stand out really. And that's kind of my worry with Eternals. It doesn't look that interesting, but I guess I thought that about Shang-Chi before just seeing the trailer. I think they left a lot of the good stuff out in the trailer, which was maybe smart because then people are kind of. It's better than a lot of people expected when they actually go to see it.
Yeah, there was no dragon in the trailer.
No. Yeah. We keep saying these references, but there was a lot of Dragon Ball for me at the end there, Mike, when he's taking on the Dweller in the Darkness. The posturing. Believe it, there was a lot of 3 ninjas. Yeah, there was a lot of Sonic the Hedgehog with just the rings spinning around him. Like there was a lot of media where I could just sort of like grab onto and be like, or like the Chaos Emeralds. Like this is just really cool looking.
I thought it was interesting. When they go to Ta Lo, you see all these different animals that exist there.
Like these kind of mythological animals from like Chinese folklore and stuff being actualized.
Like an avatar.
Is that like they looked like traditional Chinese art of animal, like the lions look
the lion dog things.
Chinese lions, but it's like, are those just so? I guess ancient Chinese people were just drawing those based on
like one
what they really
got
look
out of one got out of the bamboo forest, attacked a village, like went back, and they're like fucking faceless chickens, like making drawings of it.
Yeah, we got to put these in front of our buildings now to ward off. Like we're gonna make statues of this thing. It's crazy.
But do they explain why Maurice is in the castle? Because Wenwu is looking for this way in there. He knows the pendants is the only way. He says the city only reveals itself a certain amount of time. I don't think they even say if it's like once a year, once every 10 years. I don't think they put a number on it. But somehow he has Maurice, and somehow Maurice saves the entire day for this movie. Is that the biggest plot hole?
Ben Kingsley says that he found that Tony Leung found him at some like...
When he was doing one of the excursions to... find the entrance or whatever.
Yeah, or he found them in some shop.
Roughing it through the bamboo.
Kind of curio shop. So like he escaped. At
like a gremlin, like a mogwai.
Like
that's what he said.
I don't know.
That's amazing. I hope so.
I would have to rewatch it, but
But they also they don't explain why he talks to Ben Kingsley and Ben Kingsley can understand him, but they don't explain why either. So
and Ben Kingsley acts like the Mandarin wasn't capable of seeing him. He is shocked that the people he is interacting with right now also have the ability to see it.
Right. Yeah, that felt very like the whole second act was like
reshoots.
Okay, this is how we get to Ta Lo, is that we drive this car and like the Morris is like directing them. It was interesting. I don't know.
But they had to use their car driving skill again. Payoff, setup and payoff. We did it.
Well, that's one thing I can say about Awkwafina. I liked her performance. Her character, at sometimes she was just kind of there, and it's like, okay, we need something for her to do as the friend, the sidekick friend, I guess.
What's a line? What would Kat Denning say right now? You know, let's look to our other films that have worked.
She drives cars, and apparently she shoots arrows at the end too. So.
I like that she can make friends with anybody. Like, oh, I love your pants. Like, thank you.
Yeah.
You know, she's like just Even the bad guys like her.
Even better, the Hotel California thing coming back. I like that she said,
That was
I scream that at him to disorient
power
them.
of
She does it in the fight, and then they do the karaoke at the end. I was like, that's a good runner. That's good escalation.
I guess.
And then did you like some of these mini bosses that they have, like the masked guy that like trained?
Well, that was
Shang-Chi?
Jacob. That's really the Death Dealer where the Three Ninja stuff came back to me. Because if you remember, those kids have those masks, Mike. You know, Rocky has like the green mask, whatever.
They're like
I didn't
painted.
realize that's a mask that guy's wearing, but of course it is. That's why it's so smooth like that.
Yeah, it's like
Well,
a
and
wooden
he
mask.
never talks, and then at the end he gets his soul sucked out by the thing, and it's like, oh shit, this thing's for real. They're sucking souls over here.
And then
That's
Razor
true.
Fist is like, "We'll team up. Come on, let's do it." It's like, okay, I guess so.
I thought his name was Razor Vest when I looked at the writing on the car because he wears a vest too. I'm like, yeah, Razor
That's
Vest.
true.
But yeah, they team up. I guess the thesis for me before we get to final thoughts here coming up, we've been talking Shang-Chi for a bit. There's more good than bad. Not perfect, but better than your average Marvel movie. And I guess we would say check it out. And I guess you could check out our final thoughts coming up next.
My father and the Ten Rings army are gonna destroy everything. Burn it down. I must stop him.
Hell yeah.
On my signal.
We make a good team.
We're back. We're leaving Tao Lo because the Great Protector has just helped us vanquish the Dweller in Darkness. Here, talking Shang-Chi. We're giving our final thoughts. I'm gonna just dive right in, guys. You know, comic books, in my opinion, are the absolute worst medium for action possible. I think even in the written word, you can just espouse and go on and describe things. Whereas if you think about comic books, you know, a real fight, if a panel is the fist going back, the fist going forward, the panel's a block, the panel's a kick,
Some whooshes.
that's a whole page you used up.
Yeah.
And Mike, you only get 13 of those, okay?
Mm-hmm.
Shang-Chi's a hard sell in that area. You know, because when you think in action, you go, no, that's not true, Colin. I love all sorts of action comics. I like when, you know, Batman has an explosion behind him and he's swinging. No, that's like imagery. That's like iconography, like big moments. And I think Shang-Chi is the best adaptation possible because I think this is the best take that it ever could have been. You know, it is good action. It's much more interesting characters. It's developed. It's creative. It's not just, you know, racist stereotypes. Thank God. And in that way, I think it is super successful. Again, I don't know what I want out of the future of it. I don't know where I want this kid to show up in the scheme of things again. I would love to see another Shang-Chi movie, a, you know, Legend of Tao Lo or a Legend of whatever it's going to be. I'd like to see him be a bigger part of it. I think I told you guys off pod, but my big fear of this movie is, does it kind of have a Raiders of the Lost Ark syndrome? Like if Wen Wu just got the sister's pendant and, you know, Shang-Chi wasn't in the movie, all the stuff would have happened. The Dweller in the Darkness would have still just eaten people, and then someone else would have just saved the day with the Great Protector, right? So I
think that Shang-Chi had to kind of show his dad that, you know, basically his dad sacrificing himself at the end. They had to go through that emotional growth to get to that point, I guess you could say.
Yeah. And, you know, the father-son relationship, I mean, familial piety is a really big part, you know, of like Asian culture, Chinese culture, you know. So, like, tying the family dynamic into the core of the characters and their arcs, like, that's a really smart move, I think, too. Kind of have that work and tell that story between the father and son and learning to forgive each other for abandoning the family business or training him to be a killer. So it's like they get that moment.
No good.
Yeah. I guess if I could jump here, do my final thoughts. Colin, you mentioned the 10 rings in comics are just rings on your finger, right? The idea that they're the bracelets in this, that's way cooler. And I remember mentioning when I saw the trailer that it's like the bracelets. I'm like, oh, that's like in Kung Fu Hustle, one of the villagers, the Stephen Chow movie. you know, that they have that power. You see that kind of kung fu form where it's like bracelets. I don't know why they would ever make them finger rings. That's dumb. So they did the right thing here. And then you get a Kung Fu Hustle poster in Sean's room, which I like that because Tony Leung went to acting school with Stephen Chow, and they did some early auditions. They've had a little bit of overlap.
Cool.
So,
and the old guy in the village that talks to Awkwafina was he was the landlord in Kung Fu Hustle.
oh
right?
yeah, who
Funny.
yeah,
He
who
dies.
Tony Leung calls him young man or something. Yeah,
think,
watch who you're talking to, young man, and he's an old dude because
Yeah.
he's 1,000 years old. Yeah,
Hilarious.
So yeah, some
I always
great
like that
references,
joke.
and I love that movie Kung Fu Hustle and Shaolin Soccer, another Stephen Chow.
Yeah,
movie.
Stephen
Yeah,
Chow's good,
the
but-
Mermaid. Stephen Chow's a genius.
Yeah, so good references to like classic kind of kung fu and, you know, martial arts film heritage in this. And that's what I think, as I said earlier, a lot of people, young people, this might be their first martial arts movie, and hopefully they get interested in it. You know, you were saying comics being not the best platform for action, you know, for martial arts maybe. A good martial arts movie, it's so much about those key poses. It's not punch, like MMA is not visually interesting to watch. It's
Right, it's more
intense and
practical.
gritty, but you hit these key poses where you know that someone's blocking or deflecting. Like, it's really easy to like hit those moments. And when the choreography is good, that's why live action, even beyond CGI, is the best format for a martial arts film. And I think they do a good job of capturing that when they do. And that's when the movie's at its best, is when it's firing on those action cylinders. And it gets a little long,
Again,
but
I think,
I like it.
Yeah, I think, again, martial arts, the way that it's evolved in film, you know, films recently, is that John Wick, like, everything has to be as efficient and practical as possible because it's like realism, right? Whereas this is like, it's not totally realistic, but it's like, it looks, you know, it's flashier, it looks more aesthetic. And that's something that's hasn't really been in Hollywood recently since, like I said, Jackie Chan. So I love to see that, and hopefully it kind of brings about like a kung fu, you know, renaissance in
I would hope
Hollywood.
so.
Where it's like, you know, where you can go see a Rush Hour type movie, and you know, because we haven't had that since Jackie Chan, you know, isn't as big of a star as he used to.
There hasn't been an ascendant martial arts star since then,
just
really.
because of guns, you can write them out. There's, you know, it's a post-apocalyptic. There's no guns, or, you know, on this island it's all outlawed, like in Enter the Dragon. There's reasons to do kung fu. Put it in. Put the martial arts in the script. We want to see it.
I guess my last note on this is the martial arts in this movie are better than the martial arts in Mortal Kombat, which came out this year, which is
how would you
interesting
do
to
that?
say, right? And so, yeah, I recommend it. Go check it out if you feel safe. Otherwise, wait. It's been kicking ass, I'd say, martial arts at the box office. But yeah, Shang-Chi.
I have a feeling it'll come to DVD. You know, we always track the box office on here. I'm glad it's doing well. It'll be on there soon. People.
I'm excited for Shang-Chi 2 and the Rise of the Black Dragon or whatever, you know?
I thought it was interesting. I was
Enter the
reading
Wu-Tang.
about the box office. It's doing really well in America, but not so as well actually over in Asia, in China and stuff. I guess I don't think it's even been released in China yet.
I don't think it will be.
Yeah, so I thought that was kind of interesting, but then I was reading, it's like, I guess Chinese audiences aren't super into the stories of Chinese Americans, where they want to watch. I mean, if you're in China and you're watching all these, you know, kung fu martial arts movies done in China, you don't want to watch. It's like if you're in America, would you rather watch an American Western or, you know, a Chinese version of an American Western?
Well, this is what I ask myself whenever I watch my Canadian CW shows, Jacob. But a point I really want to point out, just because you brought it up, this is a movie about the Asian American experience. Okay?
It's set in San Francisco.
You know,
I mean,
set in San Francisco, Chinatown. You've got characters talking about, what did you change your name to? Sean. Another character confronts Awkwafina. What is your Chinese name? When Wu asks her. Well, this is this. Names
he
are
talks
important.
about his English accent, working on that as a kid.
The Fight Club promoter says, "Don't worry, girl. I speak ABC." I had to look this up. Normies, if you don't know that, that is American-born Chinese, is what he's saying. That is a cultural joke, not for us. This is a movie very specifically made for an audience, and I really love that.
And another little reference I thought was funny in the beginning when he's telling about how someone thought he was Korean. They said, "Oh, Gangnam Style." Simu Liu was born in China, emigrated to Canada, I think, at age 5. But he played a Canadian Korean in Kim's Convenience. So it's kind of funny that
commenting on, yeah.
Yeah.
For sure.
But so yeah, very interesting. My final thoughts. I did like it, and I think that there's things that make it stand above a lot of MCU movies that had some pacing problems. I guess was my biggest flaw. I have to rewatch it, but I'd say I'm more interested in seeing this again than like Ant-Man or Doctor Strange even, and I'm interested in seeing a sequel more than I am like I would be seeing like Ant-Man 3. I'd rather see Shang-Chi 2, right?
I like Ant-Man, and I would do that. Yeah, I think it's probably in the top 3 of the origin movies. You know, it might.
I think it's up there.
It
with
competes
Black
with Black Panther. Yeah.
Yeah, I put it above like the first generation of like Captain America, Thor 1. I never really liked those ones, and I think the more MCU has kind of found their formula, they can make movies within the formula while also adding different original twists on it to kind of keep it original, right? So this has that aspect, and that's what I liked about it.
Sure, and here we have, 25 movies later, a character who's reappeared since one of those early first-time, one-time origin stories, Abomination, since the Incredible Hulk movies. So
that's true.
It's right. It's the power of the deep bench of Marvel, but it's also that repetition. I think we're all feeling that right now.
And the need to have everything to remind you that everything's connected, and like, Wong can show up at one point, and you're like, oh yeah, and you have Doctor Strange and Spider-Man, you're like, oh yeah, so it's like everything's connected.
Yeah, right. Yeah, well, let us know what you thought of it. We've been talking it. Are you feeling the Marvel fatigue? Are you not? Did you watch Shang-Chi? Did you love it or not? Let us know. Write in the comments on the YouTube if you happen to watch this there. And we thank you for going on this journey to claim the 10 rings with us. Appreciate it.
Thank you. It's another Legend of the 10 Normies here with your hosts, Kung-Fu Colin,
Awkwafina,
and Jacob in the 10 Rings.
Hotel California. Copyright strike. All right. Bye.
Bye.